Hello and welcome to the Pixelated Realms Gamescast, your guide through the digital landscape, untangling the latest and greatest in video game fun. I'm your host, Tyler Salerno, and alongside me is my fiance, Katie.
Hi, nice to meet everybody.
We're really excited to have Katie on the show today. We're going to be talking about the Game of the Year nominations for the Game Awards. It's going to be a little bit different today in light of having Katie. I'm excited to have her because she is a resident expert on one of the games that was nominated for Game of the Year and is our resident expert on all things Souls-like games. So we're excited to have her opinion on the show. And yeah, so today's going to be a little bit different. Instead of talking about what we've been playing, we're going to start with discussing the Game of the Year nominees, and then we're going to go into questions, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about the controversial topic running around these Game of the Year awards, and that is, should DLCs be included in the potential nominations for Game of the Year? I think it's a pretty hotly contested topic. I can't come to a great decision myself, so that makes me think it probably is pretty hotly contested, so we'll talk about that. Getting into the Game of the Year nominations, if you haven't seen the news, Jeff Knightley, the showrunner and kind of leader producer of the Game Awards, announced their nominations for categories. Today we're just going to be taking a look at Game of the Year opportunities because, to be honest, I mean, and we went over this in previous episodes, we were really unsure what that was going to be this year. There was no like clear winner on Game of the Year, so I think as a team we were all just kind of wondering what was going to stand out the most. I think the nominees, we'll go over them in a second here, all make sense. We'll have to see. So starting with the first nominee, we have no big surprise to me because I'm still playing through it and I think it's an excellent game, is Metaphor ReFantazio. So that is the Atlas Games, the studio that brought us Persona. They brought us this kind of more medieval inspired Persona style game. Like I said, I'm still playing through it, but I'm loving it. I think it's well earned on this list. Katie, what have you seen of this game? I know you've seen me playing it, but any thoughts on that?
I don't know much about this game. I have seen you play it. Is this the one that you like ran the demo of first?
Yeah.
And I think I remember you saying you were like, that was just the demo.
It was like
there was
hours.
A lot of content just for you to demo, and then you were just like kind of sold on it. But I don't have any, because I haven't played it, I don't have any thoughts on it being a nominee or anything like that. But I mean, that's awesome that it's up there.
Yeah, no, I mean, Atlas is a great studio, so I don't really like, it's just one of those things where it's like, of course they're going to do a great job. I don't know. I think I have to finish the game before I determine whether it's going to be a Game of the Year. The game has been so different as it like progresses. Hour 10 was very different than hour 20. So we'll just have to make that judgment when I get there. Regardless, moving on to our next nominee, that is going to be, and honestly, I'm really sad Dustin and Alex aren't here because they're the ones who love this game, is Astrobots 2. And to be honest, like, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with Astrobot, so this kind of surprised me, but obviously this game must be fantastic. So you haven't played Astrobots, have you?
I haven't either played that one either. But I have seen, when I've been seeing when people are guessing who was going to be up for nominees, Astrobot was up there on a lot of people's assumptions of what was going to be nominated. And so I don't think it was a big surprise to me that was up there, just because I heard so many people talk about it. So even though I myself haven't played it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Everybody else has been predicting that.
Well, I mean, it was one of those things too where I've just heard nothing but amazing things about it. But it's like, I had my own biases about Astrobots. I'm like, this is just like that included little game they give you with your PlayStation. So I didn't really give it any like time, so but Alex says, I'm crazy and I should go back, and he's right, but I'm definitely gonna have to check out Astrobots 2 because it's kind of a big statement, like giving them a nomination for Game of the Year when it's literally it's supposed to be this kind of like marketing tool game, right?
Yeah.
But apparently it's a lot more than that, so that's great. Moving on to our third nominee, that's going to be Elden Ring
Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Shadow of the Erd Tree.
The one I have played.
Yeah, so as many people may already know, that is actually a large, but technically it is a DLC. It is a downloadable content addition to the Elden Ring game. So that's kind of creating some stir and controversy because it's like, wait, a game of the year? It's not a game, it's an add-on to a game. And what are your thoughts on this, Katie, so far? I mean, overall and about the DLC aspect.
So, well, I don't know how much I should share. If we're going to get into this a little more later. But since it is the one on the list that I have played, I am excited about it, and I don't remember, did Elden Ring itself win Game of the Year? I didn't think so. So I'm a huge fan of Elden Ring, and so having it get kind of a second option to win is very exciting for me. But I can also kind of go into, when we get to the main topic later about whether or not a DLC should be included, I can give a little more insight on both pro and con.
But just in regards to it being like, that aside, would you say it is worthy of that kind of award?
Of course. I think if Elden Ring is worthy, then Shadow of the Erd Tree is also worthy. I put a ton of time into it, and it revamped the way that the DLC runs, and so that you know, if you'd spent all these hours leveling up in Elden Ring and had like this god tier character,
right,
you go into the DLC and none of that matters. So I put everybody on like the same playing field. You can't just like level up in the base game and then go kick ass in the DLC. So they have this kind of like system where you have to work your way up in the DLC itself. So it made it feel like a base game. And I thought that was very innovative.
I mean,
for a DLC.
I gotta look it up now because I'm like doubting myself whether what awards it did win, because I know it won awards, but it's kind of like, it reminds me of like Lord of the Rings Return of the King, because that got the Oscars, but like it was for all three of them, you know? So I don't know. We'll talk about it more later. So moving on, our fourth nominee is probably no surprise to anyone who's been following the news, Black Myth Wukong. Kind of like, I've seen gameplay. I know Katie and I haven't played it ourselves. There was some controversy around the development team, and it was just a little hairy for me. Didn't really feel like something I wanted to purchase. But regardless, it still came out and had an amazing reception. So I'm not going to down the game. You know, if it deserves that accolade. So yeah, I'm interested to see what becomes of that, and we'll see. Any opinions on Black Myth Wukong?
Just the same things that you've said. I've seen some gameplay. I've heard it be highly regarded. You know, people have definitely convinced me that I should give it a try. I wasn't like turned away from it for anything. It's just I'm playing other things. And I've had friends play it, and they had nothing bad to say about it. So I also think it makes sense to see it up here because it was one of like just the most hotly talked about games throughout the year once it came out. It, like, even aside from all of the controversy, it was widely well regarded in terms of it being the game that it is. So it makes sense to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, it got great reception. I mean, it was surprising how good the reception was. Great. Moving on to our fifth nominee, that's going to be Balatro. Sorry, I always say it wrong. Which is funny because I actually have played a little bit of this, and also I have some friends who are really, really into this. Shout out to Eric, who's definitely not watching this episode. And
Ricky.
Yeah. So, but this is a game that's just like clearly a small team, probably one or two guys, and like it's just taking the world by storm. It kind of has like a Slay the Spire-ness, like addictive quality. People love it. If you're unfamiliar, it's basically a poker style game, but
it's also roguelite,
with a roguelike part of it. So you're deck builder.
It's very different.
It's this very cool mix of like playing a poker hand, but also playing this like roguelike experience. So yeah, that does not surprise me at all. This one it's
groundbreaking. It's very innovative. It's like there's not, taking those
it's a new
combinations.
concept.
It hasn't really been done like that before.
It's really taking like a lot of board game mechanics and putting them into like a poker game on, in a video game. So and now there's a phone version, so the exposure is just going to skyrocket. Yeah. So I just been seeing how many people I know who have been addicted to this game. This does not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see a smaller game like this get representation on such a stage like this, because this, it wasn't a game that was like getting marketing. It's not a AAA game by any stretch.
Yeah, it's definitely very much an indie game, and it's like, a small indie game, and it really blew up.
Speaking of our next game, which is not in any way a small indie game and a huge marketing team, is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Not a huge surprise. This one's like one of the ones that's also really not surprising. I would always expect these games to get nominated. This I haven't. This is another one that's like in my backlog, but I've played it. I loved the first one. The second one just carried everything on better. So like, this doesn't surprise me. I would not be sad if this won.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did not play the Rebirth, but I have played some of like the redone Crisis Core. I played the original 7, and I think just trend-wise, it's very common for Final Fantasy games to be well-regarded, well-received, and just be incredible games. They manage to keep very similar formulas throughout their games while still expanding on their own concepts, and I think that makes it really fun and really special.
Just thinking about my experience playing the Final Fantasy remakes, it is just incredibly concise. There's no wasted like imagery or items or space on the menus. Like everything it's all just, and the storytelling and cinematics and emotions.
Beautiful.
Like I've never like had like a character I was really sad to see die. Well, wait, I'm not gonna
I know
ruin
you're
it.
talking about,
but either way, like it just makes you care for those characters so much. And that's not easy to do, and
I feel like you're playing a movie,
right?
They're so like the cinematics, amazing, character development, amazing, character stories, great,
changing up the gameplay. You're on a motorcycle, you're in it, don't get me wrong, I do like the turn-based combat and I miss that, but regardless, I'm still not unhappy with what we
also grew up with the turn-based one, so there's a little nostalgia factor there.
I like to think, I just need time to
true.
So yeah, that's our list. That's our 6. I think Astrobots is a big surprise. I think Balatro is a big surprise, just because of the type of games they are. Elden Ring is a surprise because it's a DLC. Black Myth Wukong, Final Fantasy, and Metaphor Re Fantasio, I'd say were kind of like expected. Like you could have seen that coming. So cool. I'm excited to see what happens. We watched it last year live, or at least we tried to, and reacted, and we'll do it again this year. So actually, it was a really good event. Really, really good event. So we're gonna go ahead and hop over to our questions for now. And we have a couple questions today. I'm still reserving the question about the horror games, because I felt bad because Alex is like still. Alex,
maybe can I answer?
You can. Okay, Katie will provide her answer this
since
week.
I'm here.
Yeah. Do you want to read the question?
Yeah. Is it?
Sup dudes.
Yep. Sup dudes. Being that it's October and spooky season, are any of y'all in the horror genre? What's your favorite horror game? Do you have any regular ones you play each year? I started with Resident Evil on PS1, but currently enjoying the Silent Hill 2 remake. I want to get some VR and do Resident Evil 7. Yeah, so I do. I love horror games. I would not say I'm an aficionado. I don't play like all of the like lesser known ones, I guess I would say. And I do have
what's your Outlast speedrun?
I was about to say I have a major stopping point when I can't fight back. So I think, is that Outlast? Is that the one with
that's the one where you're just running around with the camera. Yeah.
I think Alien Isolation.
But you You have a little bit in Alien. Alien Isolation is one of the best horror games ever. Like, and that brought me to the horror genre. That's how good it is.
And I had to stop Resident Evil 2. I was doing the Resident Evil 2 remake because once you're getting chased down by the guy that you can't kill, it's too much for me. It has to be like limited. So like in Dead Space 2, there's a monster that's chasing you.
In Dead Space you get a gun.
But there is a monster that you can't kill at first, but it's limited exposure to that before you get the opportunity to kill it. So my horror genre kind of stops when I can't like defend myself.
Honestly, I just hate when games like you're like walking through a hallway and it's like when you step in this one place, then a sound is supposed to happen because it just doesn't
like
seem
Silent Hill.
But that's just not scary to me. But like
what?
Like Alien Isolation, when I know there's a freaking alien that's like in some incredible programming language like following me around and trying to kill me, it's so scary. But like if I know there's triggered sequences, it's not as scary, right? You'll like watch someone speed run like, you know, one of those like a horror like Outlast, you know, and they're just like, oh, trigger this, and they just kind of walk through everything, and you're like, well, it's not scary when you do it like that.
I don't know. Silent Hill can get pretty scary, but it's very atmospheric.
Yeah.
So sometimes the atmosphere is kind of what brings in the scare. And so when I haven't played Silent Hill 2 Remake, I really want to play it because I played Silent Hill 1 and 2, like the OG ones.
Yeah.
Real scary, and especially when you have those old school like graphics and sets of controls, and like you go somewhere and all the camera just like sticks and points somewhere so you can't see what's over here anymore.
The camera angles in the old
and in Resident
games.
Evil, like like the first, you know, the first one, just like,
how about we just like put the camera in the corner of the room?
So, yeah, very much the atmosphere definitely drives the scare. But I love the Resident Evils. I think I like some of the newer Resident Evils actually a lot more than some of the older ones, which I think is probably a hot take because I know Resident Evil 4 is very well loved. And
Resident Evil 4 was kind of the first like going into like it mostly being a shooter game.
True.
Yeah.
But I really liked 7, and I really liked 8. I thought Village was so much fun. I'm sitting there screaming at all of the things that are running at me. I loved the upgrade system in those. So I don't know what I would consider my favorite scary game. I'm definitely inclined to say a Resident Evil somewhere in there, but I also really like Dead Space. That's one that I have to play during the day. It's one that I'm just like, oh, if I played it
Alien
at night.
Isolation. For me, it's always sci-fi. It's just
yeah. There were parts of, I know this is not technically a scary game, but there were parts of Last of Us that were really scary, especially when you're going down in like the basement area and you have to turn on that generator. That's real scary. And also I need to shout out Evil Within. That one is also I feel like not widely talked about, and I thought that was a really fun one too.
Cool. Great. All right, so next question is I love it, is our character battle week for the most iconic character between Mario and Pikachu.
Oh, if we're going with most iconic, I will let you answer first.
No, you first.
Oh, okay. I mean, most iconic in what way? Are we talking for video games? Just in general? Nintendo?
In video games, yeah, most iconic ever.
Then I mean, Mario, he's just been around longer.
Yeah. He's got like 10 years on Pikachu.
Yeah. He's just been around longer. He is in a ton of franchises, right? And, you know, but I have a preference for Pikachu. But I think Mario is just, he's had more time to, and also Pikachu has changed a lot over the years. Mario has not.
Besides Chris Pratt.
Yeah,
I'd have to agree. I mean, like, I am way more of a product of Pikachu than I am of Mario, but Mario is like, he's pretty iconic.
I mean,
does Pikachu have a theme park?
Oh, good point. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be stuff like theme park-esque
thing in
experiences in Japan,
Maybe.
I feel like. But in America, no.
Open up a Pokemon theme park.
But if I were to say, like, who do you think of when you think Nintendo? I think I'm going to think Mario first before Pokemon.
Yeah, because
right?
Pokemon has, like, distanced itself from, like, being thought of as Nintendo a little bit.
Like, if somebody then said, okay, what game do you think of first when you think of, like, the Game Boy Color? Yeah. Then I'd probably say Pokemon. Right. But just like,
what was the most iconic game in the 90s? Definitely Pokemon. So yeah, good question though.
Yeah, good question.
All right, next question. Let's see here. From Oops, forgot to ask a question last week. Probably shout out to Ralph or all of our other awesome viewers. Why do you think rinse and repeat games are so successful despite little improvement year over year? Call of Duty, Madden, other sports games. Yep. So it's funny, we've actually talked about this a little bit before in the past. I think it's a great question, and I think it actually does. It's like there's cases where it is totally a great thing, and there's cases where it's not, and that can even switch in the same franchise. For example, I think Call of Duty is a wonderful example of this. You will get a Call of Duty game every year, right? I mean, we all know that. Half the time, I don't even want to touch them. And then, like, sometimes, like this Call of Duty game, I love. Like, I've played 50 hours of it already. I just love it. And so it's like that's where it's a good and a bad thing, where they just seem to switch off studios, and yes, they do it because they just need to keep generating revenue. So on that end, like, I get it, but it's like, how am I supposed to know which ones I'm going to like, which ones I'm not? So I, like, in that case, I think it's mostly a bad thing. But it also gives them time to, like, kind of mess things up and try things. And, the game development process is so long that, like, it is tedious, right? Like, waiting 10 years for a game for it to be okay is just not, like, feasible.
Looking at you, Bethesda.
I'm looking at you, Star Citizen.
I'm looking at you, Half-Life.
Half-Life 3. But then there's, like, sports games. And when it comes to sports games, I'm a little bit more understanding, because I don't even think understanding is the right word. I'm once again, I'm like one way or the I'm both ways on it. So I really like the Formula One franchise, so I would buy those games year after year. And I was usually buying them because I just wanted the updated, like, cars, tracks, drivers. Like, if you like football, if you like soccer, like, you'll want the updated stuff. If you follow that thing and you're playing a game, you want the updated information. So I understand that, and I don't expect them just to give that to me for free, right? So that makes perfect sense to me. But when you're Madden 2023 and 2024 don't, like, 2023 has monetization that doesn't transfer to 2024, or there's just, like, no improvements, or the game gets worse, which happens a lot. That's where it just seems to be a problem for me. And it's like, okay, if you cannot make the game better, do not make me pay $70 for it if you're not going to change anything about it. And, like, I think I imagine, what is FIFA or whatever it's called now. It's not called FIFA anymore. They lost the rights to it.
Oh.
But when it comes to sports games, I'm surprised we're not already on a subscription model where they're trying to be like, yeah, you play this, but it's like $30 a month and it always updates. I'm surprised. I'm sure we're there already, but yeah.
With this player, this month,
yeah. Well, it's going to be like, like, oh, you're going to buy access to this game and it's just going to always be updated. Kind of like what you do, with, oh man, I'm thinking of, like, software that nobody would understand, but, like, specific pieces of, like, soft music software, right? That's how it works now. So it's like, or video editing software. You don't just pay like $500 for the software. You pay like $30 a month, and now you're just always getting the updated version. And so part of that makes sense, and part of that doesn't make sense in the video game world. So yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I think there's no right answer. I think studios have the opportunity to make every game better, and it can make sense. And I'm happy to pay $70 or whatever every year if they're doing that. But I think the reality is you can't do that because the technology doesn't change that quickly, and they're still struggling as far as, like, financial things go. Making video game is just super expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think rinse and repeat games are successful for a couple reasons. One is just let's see what's different. Like, this is my tried and true game, and now I get to do my tried and true game on a new platform, a new system, or whatever it might be. And there will be some, even if it's small improvements, that's still a change somewhere in there. I think a lot of the time the rinse and repeat ones are also they already have a big name for themselves, so they've already got
they
that
did
going
heavy
for
lifting in
them.
their past.
Yeah, they got that going for them. Like, their advertisement is already just like in the bag. It's just already done there. And just, yeah, a lot of human nature is just going back to what's familiar, going back to what we just know and love. So I play League of Legends constantly, and that's been the same. Like, they do updates and it looks better and all this, but at its core, the way you play the game has
exactly
been the same
yeah.
since it started.
And it's also one of the most successful companies ever, and it's a free game.
Yeah, and I'm just playing the same exact thing multiple games in a row, day in and day out, and it's because it's what I know. And I like to see what's new when they come out with new characters,
but
new
we don't consider
modes.
that a rinse and repeat game, because they're not asking you to buy the game over and over.
Okay,
that's
enough.
That's the opposite of what this is.
But it's similar in the sense, though, that for the point that I was trying to make about what makes rinse and repeat games so successful is very much similar to what makes League of Legends successful.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and it's, I was trying to think of an analogy, but I'm not a big fan of the Fast and the Furious movie, so I was about to say it's like a Fast and the Furious movie. You're going to get one every year. It's not going to be incredible, but that's not a great analogy, because sometimes it was like if every other Fast and the Furious movie was actually really freaking well done, and then everything else was like the other ones weren't, so I don't know. It was a bad analogy.
I don't think a lot of there. I don't think there's really that any rinse and repeat movies that do really well, like that.
Minions. I don't know, like those kind of
Minions do really well.
Star Wars content, right? They know Star Wars content is always going to succeed, whether it's good or bad or amazing.
But they're also not like rinsing it, though.
I know. Well, yeah. Anyway.
But good question.
Yeah, great questions.
A lot of it does come down to just human nature and just what we find familiar, and also having the advertising already done for like a decade helps.
Yeah. Oh, they love that game from when they were kids. We already got free marketing, It's
Pokemon.
Right? Yeah, I mean, they've been banking off us for 30 years. So. Billion-dollar industry, So yeah, great questions. Thank you everyone for asking them. And if you want to ask a question for us to go over during the show, you can do that at pixelatedrealms.org/ask. That is pixelatedrealms.org/ask. We love questions and are building our community through questions. I'm so happy to have some repeat question askers.
It's so fun to answer them too.
Yeah. I mean, we want to hear your answers too. So please let us know in the comments if you have thoughts on these questions. I'm trying to post them on shorts, but it takes time, so bear with us.
It's not short.
Yeah, it's not short to post shorts. Regardless, we're gonna go ahead and move on. But as always, we really do appreciate it if you do hit that like button, subscribe, and give a comment if you're feeling like it. We really are working hard to grow this channel and bringing new content to everyone. As you can see, this week's been a little bit different than we have been usually, so you can tell things are shifting. So we're just really excited for the future, but we'd really appreciate it if you'd help us drive that viewership. So yeah, we want to kind of get to our last topic, main topic, whatever you want to call it, most controversial topic of the episode, and that is just going to be, should DLCs be considered in the Game of the Year discussion? And I think there's some really good points on either side. Let's hear your thoughts, Katie.
Sure. Yeah, I can see the arguments for both sides. I definitely see how it could be considered a con, because you're taking spotlight away from maybe games that don't have like previous versions of itself to rely on, to fall back on. It's hard to look at a DLC and not think of the game that put it there.
Right.
So it's almost like a renominating Elden Ring in this case. However, I also think there's an argument for if you can include remakes of a game, why not a DLC? Especially when that DLC offers you like a minimum of 40 hours of gameplay.
And that's the thing, right? It's like, okay, we look at Elden Ring. I mean, regardless, Elden Ring could have been a Game of the Year winner. I'm kind of like, I'm wondering if it did. I feel so bad, but I don't want to look it up right now. So regardless, though, it's like, okay, you look at Elden Ring, you make a judgment. But then when you combine this DLC and then you pull back and you look at it all as a bigger judgment, you know, as judging it as a whole, like, I think that's fair. You're looking at it now as a new piece of something. You know, it's a cake with a new piece of cake on top. So I think it's fair to like rejudge it. I think it's slightly, like, I'm gonna have to look it up, but I do think it's slightly weird if it got Game of the Year and then got Game of the Year for its own DLC. That might be a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But the point being is, like, it also matters how big the DLC is. If you're giving a 40-hour DLC, I feel like you've put in enough effort to almost call that a video game, right? And I don't think, like...
And it's also not just any DLC.
Right.
It's a well-regarded DLC for a well-regarded game that comes from a well-regarded company.
It's not just like a DLC that adds a quest. You know what I mean? It's a DLC that adds basically another third of the game.
It's like a pseudo sequel.
Yeah, and so in this particular case, I don't really think it's that egregious. I don't think it's like undeserved, but you almost have to take it case by case, right? I mean, like, I'm just saying, like, if Fallout 4 the DLC got a nomination, I'm like, well, that's like a series of quests. Like, I don't know, like, where do we draw the line? I don't know. Is it 20 hours to, you know, is it 10 hours? Like, what is...
I think it has to do with the way it's addressed. So that's what I was saying earlier too, about how the Shadow of the Erd Tree sets your characters back, essentially. You can't just take your character from that you've leveled up to like 300 or whatever in your base game and go and wipe everything out in the DLC. You literally basically have to start from scratch for the DLC, which makes it like a fresh game.
Well, then I think about like World of Warcraft. So when a new DLC comes out, do I just consider that new DLC, or do I consider all of World of Warcraft plus that DLC?
Oh, I think I would consider the DLC. I would take each one as its own, every expansion as its own.
But maybe that's different because it's a live progressed game and not like a strict release. I don't. So games are just not normal. So I think it's so hard to like try to codify. But I don't know. In this particular case, it doesn't feel that crazy to me, obviously. But yeah, I mean, where do you draw the line? Like, even like it gets a little hairy, right? Because like, if your game is like 1 hour long and it's a great 1 hour, but then someone makes Elden Ring, which is like a great 100 hours, how do you actually judge those two together? You know, like they could both be 10 out of 10s, but I'm like, well, this guy put in a lot more work technically. You know, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think if it just hits all of the requirements for being a nominee, right, then you know, I don't think there's a time requirement on whether or not something can be nominated. And I think the only instance where I would say that maybe this is not acceptable is if Elden Ring won Game of the Year. Let's look it up, because that would change my argument. I think I know it won stuff, but I don't think it won Game of the Year. But if it didn't, then I kind of want to remember what did win that year. Did it?
It just says the Game Awards have clarified that DLCs, expansion packs, and season passes, along with remakes and remasters, are eligible to be nominated.
I mean, yeah, we kind of figured that, right? Game packs, though, that's interesting. So
yeah, it was Game of the Year.
Okay, maybe that changes a little bit. Okay, first of all, I'm happy. I love that. Elden Ring definitely deserved that. I'm a little sad that I didn't remember that, but I go, oh, cool, and then it goes out of my brain. So I don't remember later on. I could not tell you the Game of the Year from like any year or any game that I've played that has won.
I mean,
but I don't know. Did
I'm
Final
gonna look it
Fantasy
up.
VII win Game of the Year? Because then if it did, I don't know if Rebirth should be
Why is
a
this so
winner.
hard to look up? Let's see here.
So I just think DLCs. It's so hard because I did love Shadow of the Erdtree. It's
Yeah, in 2022 it won Game of the Year.
okay. That's awesome.
And then Baldur's Gate 3 in
Okay,
2023.
that was well earned.
But no, Final Fantasy must have been gypped by Elden Ring.
No. I just meant like the OG. Did the OG one win?
Oh, let me see. That's 1997.
Yeah, I know. So if it did, then it's like,
That's so weird. It says Vampire Survivor one. Savior. Vampire Savior. I've never even heard of that game.
Well, I don't know. Tell us what you guys think.
Yeah.
Should it be eligible? I kind of feel like if a remake is eligible, then maybe a DLC fits you. I think that they kind of go into the same category. I understand that Rebirth.
No, remake is different. To me, a remake implies it's a different beast.
Okay, you're right.
A remaster should have its own category. Yeah. I don't think a remaster should be but according to Game Awards, they are considering them.
You're right. Okay, a remaster is what I meant. Remaster, I think if you can consider a remaster, then you can consider DLC. You're right. A remake like Rebirth is a completely different,
it's a different beast.
Different work of art. Yeah. Just incorporating the same story.
Yeah.
So
wow, that's crazy. So it could win in 2022 and 2024.
I love Shadow of the Erdtree and I love Elden Ring, and it is the only one on there that I've played. So I feel like all things considered, to me, it should win. However, I would be a little sad to know that some of these other games, like Balatro or like Black Myth Wukong, would get snubbed because somebody who already won for their game is now winning for the extension of their game.
I don't know. I think if that is the case, then we need to judge it on its own part, right? So you got to take away the base game and just judge it. And if it deserves to win, then it deserves to win. That's great. So I don't know. Yeah, like Katie was saying, we want to know your thoughts. So leave a comment. Let us know what you think. If you think one way or the other strongly. Obviously, we're totally bent out of shape about it. We don't know what our thoughts are.
I'm not going to be mad. Like, I'm not going to be one of those people who's just like seething if it won because of the fact that it's a DLC.
I mean, it's still going to deserve it. Everyone up there is going to deserve it. Yeah. You know? So, well, that's great. I think that was a good discussion. Any other thoughts on that before we sign off?
No, I just want to know in the comments, what you guys think about what can qualify for a nomination. And also, do you guys have any Game of the Year nominees that you want to see?
I like that one.
As a winner.
I'll say mine now.
Yeah.
Where's Helldivers 2? Like, Helldivers 2 took the internet by storm. Like, I think it's worthy.
Yeah, I did see some people say that the same thing, that they expected it to be up there.
I think it deserves. If like Balatro, and Astrobot. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see you next time on the Pixelated Realms.